So here we've got a mesquite tree here from southern Arizona near Tubac, and it at first glance it looks very simple, but of course these mesquite trees that grow in every direction, and this is probably February, I think, and the leaves are just starting to come out here again, and or they haven't fallen off from the year before, but you can see that there's a pink sky, maybe the beginning of the sunset. The mountains back here are very blue looking in this photo, and the sky is kind of a, you know, grayish blue, not a whole lot. It's fairly even down here, so there's a lot of planning that you need to do with this kind of painting, even though it looks really simple. This tree is dark, and that'll be actually the easiest part of this painting, is to do this tree and to do this bark and things on like that. But here you see that there's some yellowy leaves, kind of fall looking leaves, and kind of a mustard color through here. That pink that you see in the sky here is kind of either reflected or it's coming out in these bushes down here. And then we got some fresh green, more vibrant green looking leaves coming out down here. So there's a lot to it. Even though it looks simple, there's a lot of planning involved in this painting. And like I said, the mesquite tree here is probably going to be the easiest part to do. And then this layer here, that'll be third, I think, after the sky. So a lot of planning, and let's get going. So I pre-wet this whole piece of paper. It's a Baohong rough 140-pound paper, and I've got into here, and it's going right about here. There we go. Little pink, pick up a little white here, and it's going across there. And you can change the tint. I'm not really happy with the color of that yet, so I'm changing the tint of it with the white that I'm picking up here out of my palette, and there, and that's better. There, okay, and then we got a pink kind of layer going in here through these bushes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in. When you start these paintings, it really looks like it looks pretty rough, so you just gotta persevere and keep going and know that it's part of the process. And lay your paint down and then let it mix on the paper. This painting will paint itself in the most part, including the tree. The tree doesn't, it seems like it's a difficult thing to do, but it's fairly simple as compared to the rest of this. The planning is a big thing, like I said, into this here. So I'm going to gray off this top part here. And I'm going to do a little bead. I got rough paper here, and that's just for pretty much for the texture of the tree that I chose a rough paper for this. And that's part of the planning of your painting as well, is choosing the paper you're going to use. A nice vibrant color here. That's cobalt teal blue, and I'm going to blend that into that pink in there, and that'll do it right there. I'm thinking maybe gray that, well, no, it's going to be, I think it'll dry nice because it's a fairly even color all the way from the top to bottom in the photo. So let's stay true to the photo. And we got this pink layer going in here, we got the pink layer going in there, and let's dry this off, or wait till it's dry, and we'll resume the painting once it's dry, because you got to let it paint itself on the paper. Wait till it's dry. I don't like to use a hair dryer, but I think I will here, and then I'll get back going with the, I think, more background. The tree's the last thing that we're going to do here. Alright, so I dried this off with a hair dryer a bit, and we're going to go in here and paint these mountains in here. And I've got the mountains up in here. Pick up that little dot that I put in here. I've got the mountains a little higher up than in the photograph, I think, here. So I'm going to try to cut around these trees a little bit, or the tree trunks a little bit here, but it's not super critical because they're going to be darker And then what I can do is, if I think they're going to affect the color of the tree, then I can go in there and just with some water and clean them up where the tree trunks are going to be here. And I'm going to put a little bit more into here, like that, and then blend it into these trees here like that. It is quite a vibrant blue color and with a bit of a misty white in the bottom here. So I'm going to just come in with some clean water right on the bottom of those and come across like that, and wet that. I'm just going to blend that in a little bit there. That looks a little bit too bright into there. And then now that I've done that, I can go in there with my paper towel and then just lighten them up just a little bit in there. And they do that, and you can see that in the background. Whoop, wrong picture. So you can see that in the background what I'm trying to achieve with those mountains in there, and you know, just they're just peeking out a little bit, and so I've toned them down at the bottom a little bit, and that should look quite good. So the next thing I'm going to do is this. There's kind of a mustard looking line across the top of that, and I've got some Mayan yellow, and this is it's quite vibrant in the photograph, so I'm going to go ahead and roll this in there with this is quite a soft brush, and I'm going to go right over this tree for the sake of getting this really correct in the background like that. Like that, about there. And just for the heck of it, I'm just going to put some water into here, just below it, just so I don't create any hard edges. And I want it blending into the next layer that I have here, which is kind of the pink layer. And I'm just going to blend some of that pink into here. And you can see what it's doing with that. The water that I put in there, it's softening it. And up above is a little bit more of a hard edge against the sunset here. Yeah, and I might just blend that in right to that branch. Maybe a little bit over here so it makes sense. There, kind of like that. And then I've got another kind of layer in here I'm going to work on. That's what I meant about doing the tree last here, because it's the darkest thing, and it's everything I'm doing here will end up behind it because it's dark. Excuse me. Looking good there. And then I've got some really vibrant green down into here, this area. I'm just seeing what, I'm just waiting, being patient here, seeing what it's doing on the paper. There we go. And I'm going to use some sap green. I'm just going to put that in right down into here. And that's going to give me that nice vibrant green. And I can either paint all this by hand and put a little dot here and there and everywhere, or we can spray it in and then clean it up and done. Just like that. And then we can get some darks into here. A little neutral gray into here. I'm going to tap this in here some more. I'm not going to leave that above too much there. There we go, like that. What I will do is I'm going to get some more red, mix up a little bit more pinky color here, load up my brush, and I'm going to blend it in with this right into here with this pinky color. And I'm not going to leave any white in here. I don't want any little white highlights. because it's kind of a sunset. All this stuff is kind of in the shade here. And then what I'm going to do is just let that blend together. And right here, there's kind of a vibrant red bush right beside this tree here. Kind of an orangey color. There we go. And a little bit more of the sap green. Just because I've still got a lot of orange on this side of the brush, but I got my sap green on the other side here, so. Just like that. And I'm going to go greener here with a little undersea green. I'm just going to drop that into this corner. Now I'm being careful because this tree here is going to be lighter than this undersea green in some spots anyway. And that there. Trying to see my drawing here a little bit. And there, there, that. Little burgundy yellow ochre to break that up into there. That's about all in there. So I'm looking at, I've got a pretty good sheen going on here, but what I want to do, I'm going to dry my brush off. It's full of water. I'm going to clean up this bottom edge. Like that, and the next thing I'm going to do is get rid of all these little white highlights in here. I don't want them today. If you're doing a field or something, they're nice to have, and you can put some darks under them to make them look like rocks and things. But in the sunset scene, I'm just going to get rid of them all, just by blending them in here and there. I sprayed some water on there to help me. And this is all tree trunk, and we're good there. I'm just gonna clean that up just a little bit like that there. That's looking good. So I've got another little highlight there. Get rid of all this. Like that there, and that's looking good. So right in here, I've got these little grayish white looking trees that are coming up, and I'm going to leave that until this gets a little bit lighter. I'm sorry, a little bit drier. And I'm just going to pull them up with a palette knife or the end of my brush there when it gets drier. I'm looking at this from the side, and you can see the sheen on here, and that tells me I've got to wait. And I've got to, I want to splash some water on this later on, or some darks. And but I'm going to wait till that gets a little bit drier there to do that, or else it's just gonna, if you use a palette knife now, it's just gonna close in, and all your work's gonna disappear. So it's good to wait. Okay, so this is dry enough here. We can just kind of see if I can pull up some of these twigs that come up here. These twigs are little trees. It's still a little bit wet to do that, and so instead of scratching the highlights, it's giving me darks, which actually won't be too bad. We can use some of those too in here, and you can see how what's happening to the paper. This is a rough paper, and if you do this, it'll pool the pigment where you've scratched it instead of separating the paint and having it stay. Now the color that you use does make a difference as well, but mostly it's how wet it is. You see these highlights are kind of closing in here too, so it's a little bit early, but I'm just going to put deeper ones in here. You can even see the transition where it's a little bit drier here than it is up here, and this is closed in, made it dark, and this is a highlight. So that actually is looking pretty good. And it gets really dark, really light up here, so I'm not going to overdo that. That's just really fun to do. And then down here, I can see this building really nicely in here. This color's mixing on the paper. And that could be over top of that tree here. I'm just going to rub that out a little bit. It's got some really neat texture going on into here, so continue that there like that, and that's going to close in a little bit here. So I'm going to, maybe I should just wait a little bit more and then do more of this a little bit later. And then, so what I'm going to do now is, I've got a brush right here. I've got some titanium white. And I'm liking this pink hue, this pink color. I'm just going to splash a little bit into here, and what that's going to do is give us some really neat texture. There, a little happy face there. You should take that out, it's just too distracting. It's funny how your eye picks up shapes, especially face shapes. Your eye will pick that up real quick. There, so it's just gonna blend into there, the white that I put in here. Clean that off, sorry for the noise. Into there like that. Yeah, that's looking good. And this mustard kind of color is going to separate itself nicely up there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-wet this. I just want another layer of color into here. So I'm going to get some Quinacridone Gold and just drop it into that color that I put in there, into the water that I put in there, and it'll just blend itself. It'll just be a soft little indication of and just another layer in your painting, and it'll look good. There, that's about it there. Try that off. And so I just want to tackle the rest of these little scrapey marks here before the tree. And you can see already this titanium white that I splattered into this water is just diffusing itself, and it's pretty much disappearing. And I'm thinking I've done enough there, and I've got a good indication of these little white trees in here. And this is the view from the backyard of a house that we rented one winter, and it's probably February. Well, the sunsets in Arizona were just absolutely amazing. I don't want to do too much here. I don't want your eye to go off the page here, but I do want to just break it up just a little bit, and then it ties in. This dark will pull your eye, and then I think that's looking good there. All right, so the next thing I have to do is work on this tree, so I'll get a bit of a different brush. Yeah, I've got a whole tray mixed up here with some brown left over from another painting, but I do want to darken it, so I'll throw in some neutral gray into there. And again, that pinkish tone, I've got some, well, that's actually almost a perfect color here for a mesquite tree. It's pretty dark. And I don't know if you've ever been to Arizona, but the sap from the mesquite tree, where they trim the branches, drips onto the ground, and it's quite dark. It's almost black in color. And if you drive around down there on a Sunday, you see everybody smoking doing their pulled pork or whatever they're doing on a Sunday in the backyards. And you see all these plumes of smoke, and they use mesquite wood a lot down there for their smokers. So I'm doing this tree, and I'm seeing this bloom into here, and that's because I'd wet it. before, and I'm gonna leave it for now. And I can clean that up easily. I'm just going to break up that edge just a little bit here, just so it doesn't look strange, and into there like that and that and that. The biggest thing here is I don't want to lose the vision of this tree, lose the drawing. So I'm going to go really dark, and wherever I put this dark in, it's really just going to bleed into the rest of the painting here, and it's going to blend, and it's almost black on the side of that tree there. Now I don't want a whole lot of work to do there, so I'm just going to leave that till that dries a little bit more, and then I'm just going to work up here to there like that, and I can already see the texture coming out of this tree. And I'm going to start with this really dark color. This neutral gray with whatever I had left over on my brush. Well, that was a mistake right there, but I can leave it there and it'll just become interesting. These mesquite trees just grow every direction. And you can paint every branch like this, because I'm doing this because I've drawn this ahead of time, this to be closer to what this tree actually looks like. And this would be best painted plein air, because the colors that you see plein air are, well, it's so much easier to see the colors. There and there, like that and there. I still got just a hint of the foliage that's just coming out on this tree to paint in at the top here. So I'm not going to be too worried about all this detail up here. And then I'm going to throw in some of this brown here on this left edge, and it should really start to look like a tree. Whoop, that was a little bit of a mistake there. I don't like that. I'm just going to blot that a little bit with the paper towel, and it'll be good. Like that there. I got another branch coming up here. See, they just go and grow in every direction, these trees. So whatever you paint, it actually is probably going to be realistic, but whether it looks realistic in your painting is another story. Another big branch there. Let's run that right off the page. And a couple other branches. Sometimes almost the more that you do, the worse it'll look. But you do have to let it paint itself. It's like that. And this looks like it can just be filled in with something here. Even though that's kind of what it looks like. There, just like that. Now with the colors that blend there, because the paint was still wet underneath, I can go in here like this. This looks like I need to fix this a little bit here, so I'm going to do that. And the other thing you can do is just blot the whole thing, and that's what kind of I'm going to do here, and just give this some highlights in there like that. So much happier with that now. And now I'm going to give this thing some color. And while it's still wet, that's nice to do, because it'll just bleed into your other areas. that you've already painted that are still wet. And if it's not wet enough, if it's not doing what you want it to do, you can wet it some more. And just give it some color here. And because it's Arizona, I'm going to dip into my turquoise. And we'll just give it some highlights here and there. A little finger painting. You can do that with a brush, but it's quicker to just use your finger. Blend that in a little bit. Like that there. So then I'm going to grab just one of these cheap brushes that I have, these little bamboo things, and I've had these for a very long time, and get into some of this green here. And I'm going to start kind of where the green is clumped up a little bit here. And because this is rough paper, and this is, I was talking about choices before, and using rough paper will let you just drag the brush ever so lightly over this paper, and you create these little, all these leaves, just like that. You see they're creating themselves there, and you don't actually have to paint every individual leaf in. You could just make little clumps and then pull that away. Especially if you mash your brush like that, you can get that done and it actually looks great. Just like that. Reminds me of Bob Ross for some reason. There. Alright, I'm just going to get a little bit of gray and gray off some of this. Just to tie that into here. And you can see how dark this tree is here now too. You can kind of and you don't want to get rid of everything that's in the background here, so you got to do this. You can't be afraid of it, but you got to do it until it looks right. So that's about right there. So I'm looking at how this is shaping up here. I'm just going to blend this color a little bit more. That in there, and I've got a little bit of undersea green, and I've got a lot of pigment here. Just lightly tap it onto here. And that should diffuse itself nicely, and I'm going to put just a little bit into here too when I'm at it. I like to be going this direction because it tends to spray in a vertical line, but I don't want any in the sky, so I'm going to go in this way here. I need that just a little bit more wet. You see what I mean? It's sprayed in this direction, so I can make verticals by spraying here, but I don't really want to get a lot into the sky, so I'm going to persevere. Clean that off. Snow green. Yeah, brush. I'm trying to blot some of this a little. Oh, let's do that. Just like that. And you see how you can get rid of it? You just wet it and then press straight down and just pull it off like that. Or just a little bit too much, and then you can have a look and see those little splatter marks, and you can just add some water and get rid of some of them there. So here, right in here, I'm just going to go down the bottom here. This Mesquite is really black down the bottom. And you carefully lay in almost pure pigment down into these areas. And that'll define the branches a little more. And that's the one that I blotted out before. And you can just put some, just a little spots of dark colors into here, and it'll really make it, it'll define your branches nicely. And if you find you've done it too much, like that, you can use some water or your finger and help it look the way you want it to look. And I've got some branches in there, or some leaves. I don't really want to mess with them too much. So that's about it. I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then I'm going to work on that tree a little more. So now I'm looking at this tree, and I've got 3 different kinds of salt here. I've got regular table salt, I've got coarse salt, and I think this is kosher salt here. And I can drop some of this in, and each of them look a little bit different. You can experiment with them if that's something you want to do. And I'm just going to drop a little table salt into this tree trunk here, and it'll give it a little bit of highlight. It's too dry up here to do much anymore with it, except for up there. It's good. Maybe a little bit here and there. And the rock salt, or the coarse salt, it does make squares about that big when you drop it in there, and the kosher salt seems to, I think it dissolves a little bit easier. So I'm just going to drop some of that in there, like that. And this, I'm seeing this black line here that I put in. I'm just going to add some water above it. And that'll do 2 things. It'll help the salt do something, give you some texture, and it'll blend it in a little better. It just helps give that tree some more dimension. Again, if you help that out there, just like that. And people really like tree paintings, so it's worth putting in a little bit more effort. And it really doesn't take much more time. You just kind of put in some extra detail in there, and just make sure there's nothing that really stands out. And if you stand back, you can really look at it. That's looking pretty good. Like I said, one thing I don't like is how all this looks into here, and I'm just gonna widen that out a little bit, just like that. Yeah, that looks better. There's a better supporting structure for this tree, and they do grow in a weird direction, so sometimes you just have to change it to make your painting look better from what it actually looks like in real life. That's looking great right there, I think. You got to stand back and have a look at these paintings. Even though this is a little bit smaller than, it's 6 by, or maybe a little bit more, maybe 7 by, I don't know, 8, 12, something like that. Anyways, but I'm just looking at this from behind my stool here, and I think I'm just going to let it dry and see what it wants after that, if anything. If not, then it's pretty well going to be done, and like normal, I'll look at this in the next day. So thank you for watching again. I'm just going to scrape the salt off of this once it's dry, and we'll see what it looks like. I'll post the end picture on this video will be the final result after I scrape the salt off. So thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. It helps me out, and give it a thumbs up if you like it, and give it a go. Talk to you soon. See you later. Bye for now.